Hey guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today we are painting some leaves. So I collected a few leaves from the birches as well as from the fireweed because it actually had at this point a very beautiful reddish and purplish colors, and I really wanted to try it. But yeah, let's watch the video and see how it goes. So here are my leaves. It's a leaf of a birch, and then there are two leaves of fireweed, which is in Finnish horsma. When I was doing the video, unfortunately we didn't have many colorful leaves yet, although the autumn has already started. But I start painting with the leaf of the birch. I add some lemon yellow there, and it is a relatively light layer. I try to do it as a flat wash, which means that the leaf hasn't been, or the paper hasn't been wetted beforehand, and I let the first layer dry. Then I continue with the leaf of the fireweed, and I add the same color. I want to have a nice base and that the colors become relatively vibrant. So my first layer is the lightest color, which is the yellow, and in this case it's the cadmium yellow or deep yellow. And the third leaf, the little bit bigger one, which is red, mostly red and brownish colors. I thought, because it is a little bit bigger, that I wet it first and then I add the cadmium yellow as such, so I have a little bit more time to do so. I also have a little bit of a orange there, which is made basically out of deep yellow and cadmium red. I add the color in patches. I have speeded up my video here a little bit, so it's much faster, but usually it takes a bit longer time. And also a good tip is, when the area of part of the leaf has dried, then you add water later on when it's completely dry, and the colors come out nicely. But at the moment I still have relatively wet leaves, so it's able to add some of the reddish colors, but it's slightly drying up now, though I'm still putting the middle, I don't know, is it middle vein of the leaf, and it's a little bit of a darker red, so I added a bit of a crimson red to this leaf to have a darker color. I waited till everything has dried, so now I continue with the second layer. On my birch leaf I have added just water, and then I add a nice green, so it has this really nice patches there, and mostly they are really dark brown, but around those dark patches there is a very light green. I want that this works as wet to wet, so it's not having those hard edges. I mix more of a brownish, very dark brownish color out of deep yellow and crimson red, and then having a little bit of a ultramarine blue there as well. However, I thought it's maybe better to continue with the second leaf, because on the first leaf the surface is already dried, so I have to wait it dries completely so I can continue. And here I do it kind of like the same way as I have done with the first leaf. So it's just really wet the paper and wet the area I want to paint on, and then adding a very light green out of lemon yellow and some ultramarine blue, so you get really nice green there. And also having a nice orange adding in between, because this leaf is more of a green and orange rather than just yellow and brown. What I do here is basically really emphasizing the edges. I try to add a little bit of a structure into the leaf, but I don't want to make it too realistic, so I'm not going to add every single vein there. Just really having this really nice structure that it looks like a leaf, and it gives the idea of realistic without putting too much effort. Although I do spend a lot of time of adding these little areas and there while the paper is still wet. And I try not to add, for example, too much of the orange onto the green, because those two colors I have added basically when on the second layer. The third leaf has also a little bit of a green area, although and orange, and although it's mostly really dark red, I want have this little highlight there. But I continue to add the red. I use a very strong crimson red and then a crimson red mixed with deep yellow, so I'm getting a little bit of an orange tint as well as a very dark red. And I continue to add a bit more of edges to the second leaf. I have as well as a little bit adding the orange, a very very light orange to the first leaf. On both leaves, or every time when I start working with a different leaf, I actually add some water, because I really want that it is wet to wet technique. But the reason why I'm jumping from leaf to leaf is that I wait that each area is drying completely, so I can just continue. And this way I avoid that the brightness of the colors is disappearing completely. Now I have decided to add a bit of the much darker brown. So although I mixed it at the top, I thought I need to refresh, and I need far more of this dark brown than I thought. So I continued to work on my birch leaf, and again you can see that I have wetted the area before, and I just add the really dark patches here in the green areas. So I had a little bit of a surrounding, some of the patches had a bit of a green around them. And I'm a bit careful that the main vein on the birch leaf I don't overpaint, so it gives a little bit of volume to the leaf. And then also emphasizing a little bit the edges. I continue to emphasize the edges at the second leaf, so I use basically the same brown and just adding a little bit of a color here. I start to build up a bit of a contrast. And then adding spots, and I occasionally look at my leaves. What do they look like? And then adding a bit stronger, and you can see as well that the area has been wetted as well, maybe a little bit of a darker green. So having added more of the ultramarine blue to the bright green and working with the colors basically that I have there. And again in the middle I leave it relatively light, so as the only very realistic lane there. And mainly focusing on emphasizing the edges, partly because it really looks like on the leaves that you can see it from the red one, that the dark edges. And meanwhile the leaves actually have been drying during the painting process. Now I add a very strong crimson red, and I try to look a little bit in which direction the leaf is bending, so that in between there's a bit of a highlight coming through, and then from the edges that it's a bit more darker. But I think also the drawing helps a lot to have it right from the start. And while I apply the red color, at the same time I add a bit of this very dark purple brown, so I just continue to work with both colors. And then if you have a little bit of a brighter orange, then it's good to have there as well. But the contrast comes out quite easily if there's a bit of a lighter color, and in this case it's quite of a challenging leaf because the colors are much darker. To emphasize the contrast or the highlight, the difference between those values is much more difficult than, for example, on the birch leaf, because they were really just the brown spots and in contrast to the very pale yellow. And I actually wetted on the bigger leaf, I wetted only the one side, and then I just wait. Then I continue to add water then on the other side, so I'm not wetting the entire leaf as it's a bit not that fast. But now we are approaching the end of this video, and the leaves are basically ready, but I want them to pop out on the paper, so I'm using here phthalo blue, but of course you can use any other cooler blue, so for example such as cobalt blue. And I have added the shadow, but I want the edges of the leaf coming out much better, so I have added the tiny bitsy indigo blue, so really creating the contrast. With the shadows, I think it's important to know that it's better to work as a flat wash and not as wet to wet, because it gives a really nice smooth painted area and it looks much nicer, I think. Then I continue to do the same on the last leaf, so I did draw my shadow there, and I think I recommend to do that. You can see now the contrast between the red and the blue. So it really, this red really pops out and it really looks nice here. I actually took a picture of the leaves so I have an idea, and I put a lamp above so that I'm getting a nice shadow, and I'm much more aware what the shadow looks like, because like I said before, during the painting process the leaves start drying and the kind of change in their form. And here I'm adding my last of indigo blue. Okay, so it was a really nice experience to paint those leaves, and I hope you enjoyed to watch the video as well as try it out yourself. So here's the final product, and yes, we have some beautiful colors on the leaves. And that's it for today, and I hope to see you in my next video. So until then, bye!